I'm Jack Davis. I call to order a meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee. Um, we're joined by Public Health and Safety, and we're just going to be going through the first item on the agenda, which is the ARPA resolution. And so, pardon me, I wanted to give a little background to everyone. Based upon the fact that Jim Palin and I have attended some of the other meetings, and we had some similar questions. So the American Rescue Plan Act really covered a couple of areas of where they were looking initially to invest in: health, sewer, water, drainage, and broadband. And then there was another category called lost revenue. And that included that we can invest in parks, although in the original document, it was for certain districts that were in distressed areas. And obviously, Darien doesn't quite qualify as a distressed area. But when they did the revision, we're able to do that. There were limitations on what you could not invest in. You couldn't use the funds to pay down debt. You couldn't use the funds to pay up your funded pension liabilities, and you couldn't use it to settle litigation unless the litigation was associated with a COVID-19 lawsuit. For all of us, what we're going to be looking at on Monday is that this is going to be very similar to how we pass our capital resolutions during the budget. We're going to be talking about one large number, but in reality, there's a list of projects, and each of those projects are given an appropriation, and they can't go over that appropriation without approval. So the list that will be part of the resolution, referred to as Schedule 1, is the list of the appropriations for all those projects. And for public health and safety, the projects that you reviewed, that's the appropriation for that project. That's what's going into the overall account to be accounted for. Overall, all the projects will be reported to the U.S. Treasury, and that's part of the reason why they did a change on lost revenue. I just looked up the numbers. 1/4 of rural America lacks internet capabilities. And that's just households and towns. And yet we're supposed to be reporting this back to the federal government over the internet. There's a lot of towns of less than 5,000. There's a lot of towns in this country of less than 1,500 people. And the Treasury just doesn't have the people to be looking at all this. So they decided that any community getting less than $10 million was able to qualify for a list of projects that otherwise one might have been scratching their head over under the loss of revenue. So when we're looking at things, and I'm going to mention, Mac will talk about it, but the drone or signage, which one would not necessarily think is COVID related, we're allowed to do so under the revised instructions from COVID. All funds have to be spent by December 31st, 2026. If we do not spend all that money, it goes back to the federal government. I do like Jim Palin's comment at a Board of Finance meeting, which was, if you don't think we can figure out how to spend $6+ million to save our taxpayers money over this time or to make investments in our infrastructure, then I will personally resign from the Board of Finance. And since I don't think Jim has any intention of resigning, I would believe we'll be able to spend that money. I want to get into the process a little bit, because the process is going to be very similar to processes we already have in town. If, for example, on an infrastructure project's listed for $1 million, and Ed Gentile does an estimate and finds out it's $1,100,000, Ed would have to go back to the Board of the Selectmen and then the Board of Finance to get approval to spend the additional $100,000. Based upon how the Board of Finance intended to pay for that $100,000 extra, be it out of the general fund, contingency, or making a special bonding for it. The bonding and the general fund would also have to come back to the RTM for approval for the incremental 100,000. So some of these projects we may see again, although I will tell you, they're much, the term I used was, Jim, I just used your name in vain as you're joining. The fact of the matter is that these estimates are probably, they're not WAGs. A WAG, for those who don't know it, is a wild butt guess. They're more SWAGs, which is a scientific wild butt guess. There is some analysis that was done as part of the normal capital to figure out what was going on. So as I said, under most circumstances, projects that are over, they cannot be signed a contract on without going through the normal process that we have. For grants, which is part of the public health and safety, they're going to be putting together a committee that includes Ally, who runs human services, maybe somebody from the Commission on Aging and a couple of other commissions and group, and somebody from the RTM. And they will, anybody who wants a grant will have to go through the normal grant process. Those grants will be analyzed by that committee and recommended to Kate, the town administrator. Kate will review it and then bring those to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen will have the final authorization on those grants. So there's a process for that. Again, there's small contingency here. There will be periodic reporting to both the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. And as long as, because those are public records, those reports will also be made by F&B periodically back to the RTM. We're going to use the same process as what's used in town for closeouts of projects that we use in the capital account. So if something comes under, those funds get put back into contingency. If we realize that certain projects will not be completed in time, let's say we don't give out all the grant money, then that will be returned to the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen will establish new areas for which to go on. That will then go back to the Board of Finance and back to the RTM. So I just wanted to give that overview on this, because those were some of the questions that we saw at other committees. The list is the list. These are our appropriations. That's what we're voting on. So just if there's any questions on that, let me know, and I can do my best to answer them. Seeing and hearing none, I'm going to hand it over to Mac, who can, they've been working on, public health and safety has the lion's share of the projects out there. So without question, you guys have the biggest report going forward on Monday night. And Mac, I'll hand it off to you.
No, thanks. Before I start, I do have a question. There's a couple people on the call, and I don't know who they are. I just want to make sure, because I need one more person for a quorum. Can someone identify themselves? Because there's
Paula one just left.
Yeah. So anyway, well, we'll just keep going here. I'll start.
Mac, you see me? What, I don't know what my phone number comes up as, or my screen, or.
This is Holly?
Yeah.
Yes, I see you. Yes, thank you. Okay. Well, why don't I go ahead and I'll start with the health department. They've got a couple couple things. Well, one is basically they're going to be replenishing all the materials that they used for COVID during the vaccinations. They could be gloves, things like that, all the testing kits, things like that. And those will be appropriated as needed, but they're basically just going to replenish because they used up pretty much all they had, and that's the 170,000. They also want to reimburse for some of the actual use of the vaccination clinics. That's 50,000. Those are two things there. Now going down to the police department, they have two items. One is their in-house TV system for monitoring security. When I met yesterday with a group with Chief Anderson, he was pretty specific about it. It's not only outside cameras that they want to replace, but it's also inside cameras, like in the detention area when they bring in prisoners. And that stuff is at least 10 to 12 years old, and it's starting to fail. So they want to replace that. So that's what that's for. And then they also have a switching system that controls all of their systems, like internet, phones, their radios, and that's all antiquated as well. So that's something they want to replace. And then the other item is the drone, which we all kind of chuckled about. Why do they need a drone? But the reality is that it's very good for a number of reasons. One, for large public events that the town has. It could be one of the parades. It could be the fireworks. If there's an incident or any concerns, they would have the drone right there for that. They'd also be using it in other departments. While the police will first start with it, eventually the fire department will be able to use it. And also possibly at town hall, Jeremy with zoning issues may be able to use it. So if there's a situation where they want to look at something from the air, maybe two disgruntled neighbors that are upset about a tree or something, the drone will be helpful for that. So and it's not the type of drone that you and I might buy for a few $100s on Amazon. This thing has infrared capability. There was a recent incident with the police where they were tracking somebody in town who was suicidal, had a weapon, and there were 8 or 9 officers involved. And had they had a drone, it would have been a little bit easier to track this person. They were going through woods and stuff. So anyway, these are all things that in the bigger picture really makes sense for the police to have that. So then moving on to the fire department, they're under various parts of the fire department, but the fire commission wants to clean up the catch basins that are up at the fire tower. When they do drills, debris and oil gets down into the catch basin, has to be cleaned out. So that's something they're going to work on there. Let's see. There's in the various departments within the fire departments, they want to get new rescue jacks. Apparently, they use them for things like lifting a vehicle on the highway, and the ones that they have are somewhat antiquated. So that's an item there. There's some outdoor repairs at the Norotan Heights Fire Department on the outside, a joint and mortar repair. And so some of these things could have been lumped into the general budget, but the idea is that they can do it with this, and it lowers the budget. The Norotan Fire Department has a bunk room they want to renovate, and the reasoning for that is that they're finding that more and more people, men and women, want to come down to the firehouse in bad weather and get there before there's bad weather that hits. And the idea is that they can be there and actually work. They're going to have workstations, and then also have cots and bunk beds to sleep in, men and women. So that's something they're going to work on there. Let's see. I guess more things at the drill tower. They need to pave the road. The road is very in bad shape, as we saw on Saturday, and they also want to place a classroom up there, which makes sense. There's a strong possibility they can get some of the portable classrooms from the elementary schools, if it's feasible. Put one of those up there. That way, men and women don't have to travel back and forth when they're there for training. They don't have to leave and then go to do classroom work at one of the firehouses. They can do it right there. So let's see. I think that's about it. One more thing. Jumping back to public health. The public health is one of the last departments in town that does not accept credit cards. It's mind-boggling, which could be a whole nother issue about why that is. But they've only accepted payment with checks, and the processing times are really slow. So the idea is that they would get up to speed with having a check processing, just like all of us can pay for our dump sticker, pay for our beach pass, that kind of thing. So I think that covers all of them. And any questions?
If I'm just going to add a little bit on the color
Sure.
on the final things on the on that is to understand part of what we're doing in the health is the town does have an emergency facility, disaster facility at Darien High School, where we do store about 300 cots and other things like that there. Replenishing what the health department has is another sort of preparedness, emergency or disaster recovery capability for not just COVID, but anything else that may come down our road. On the grants, no organization has yet been identified, but there are things such as mental health, food insecurity, people who've had rent insecurity because they lost jobs during COVID, especially if they worked in the hospitality industry. And so there's a slew of areas that we'll cover that is very much in line with the concept of helping others through COVID. And it's about 10% of the monies that's here that's again in public health and safety. And the grants, as I said, will be reviewed in detail before any money's going. And you're not going to see large sums of like one organization getting $100,000. They're going to have to define what they're going to be using it for and how it's going to benefit the community in that. But there's definitely a need out there. Everyone's heard that mental health and other things have increased during the pandemic, as many of us, have been cloistered, or our significant other is at home working with us. And while we love them, that's too much love. So, I just want to point that out. I also want to point out that the RTM representative on the ARPA committee, we were very fortunate to have Martha Banks be there. And so Martha is responsible for all these individual write-ups that you may have seen on each of the projects, as that's something that Martha and Deb Ritchie had designed back in the day on F&B, and Kate was willing to shorten it a little bit, but definitely put it into effect on using this, which was very helpful explaining the multitude of projects that are out there. So, any other questions or anything for anyone?
Jack, Jim Cameron in District 4.
Oh, okay, Jim, yeah.
Thank you. I just, a little self-serving plug here, but I just wanted to point out that all the ARPA meetings are available on the DarienTV79.com website if you want to look through the process that they went through. We've also archived last weekend's tour of all the fire departments, which also shows some of the projects that Mac was talking about. The need for a bunk room and the need for some of the mortar repair as well too. So it's all out there for you to watch your viewing pleasure.
Well, Jim, you got a little bit ahead of me, because I did have on my notes, I'll show you over here, plug that they did put an excellent cameraman out there. and that was part of the tour. So there was a really good conversation, and if you couldn't get to go out on that rainy, cold Saturday to go and look at all this stuff, the tour is well worth watching on the Channel 79 and the Vimeo. So
Thank
Now,
you, Jack.
and,
Jack
and
is in the
Jim,
mail.
just and Jim, also just to comment, I was amazed. What John, the cameraman, his camera was the size of like my fist. It was this teeny tiny thing, but the picture quality was incredible. And the sound, when I watched it, I was super shocked that it blocked out all the wind, because it was windy when we were up at the fire tower. Very, very good quality. So I don't think you need to ask for any new equipment.
Thanks, Mac. Thank you.
I will tell you, it took about 2 hours, and the fire was already going at home when I got here, for my ears to return to some normal color. But but yes, it was a good tour, and it's well worth looking at, not only for the ARPA, but also for the fire engines that are being requested, and just an update on what our great volunteers are doing for this town. So I
I'll
thought
send
that
in
was
the Vimeo links tomorrow. I'll send out the Vimeo links to the fire
super,
department tour and the ARPA shows tomorrow to everybody on both committees here.
Well,
greatly appreciated, Jim.
Yeah, thanks.
Absolutely.
One thing I mentioned to Jack as far as the tour, I was just so impressed with each firehouse. I mean, that place, each one is immaculate. You could eat off the floor. Everything is in its place when the men and women arrive, obviously in haste to go to a fire. They're not looking around for stuff. It is ready to go. I mean, it was really impressive.
Also, the size. I mean, it's one thing, and I talk about my 3+ year old grandson who just loves fire engines and dinosaurs. But when you as an adult are standing next to some of these fire engines, to understand the size of them and how spotless they are, and big, it is very impressive with the work that they do. So, any other questions, or are you going to break off, Jim, Mac, and?
Yeah, I think this is a good point to break off. Any other questions or anything? Otherwise, we'll go to our own meeting and hook up again with you all on Monday night.
All right, super. Thank you all for joining us. Always a pleasure. We seem to do more joint meetings with public health and safety, and we enjoy every minute of it. So
Thanks, Jack.
thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for teeing this up. Thank you. Okay, so we'll all go to our Zoom meeting now.
Okay, so for F&B, can I have a motion to move the resolution for ARPA and the approval of $6+ million for that? So who wants to move? I have Louisa moving, and a second, Jenny, since Louisa beat you for moving. Do we have any discussion? Any questions? If we're ready to vote, are there any no votes? Seeing none, are there any abstentions? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9. Okay. All in favor? It passes unanimously. Great. Next on the agenda was just a discussion of everybody's status with their various committees, and how they're matching off with the Board of Finance. The ones I've participated in have been good conversations and discussions. Has everybody been able? We haven't been able to do a school one yet, I don't believe. Have we, Peter? You have? No, okay. So we'll try and get that orchestrated. Jim made a couple of changes for what they're discussing when. Last night at the Board of Finance meeting, I have to watch the meeting because honestly, I did not write down what changes he made. So I'll just, the easier thing is rather than watching a meeting for a second time, I may just give Jim a call. But if there's no questions and nothing else going on, everybody's happy. Then can I have a motion to move approval of the last minutes? I have Beth. Barry, you're going to raise your hand this time? I had you the last time. For a second? I need a second. Bert, we have a second. Are there any no votes? Not seeing any. Are there any abstentions? Not seeing any. The minutes pass unanimously. Another good job by you, Jenny. And then I'll take a motion to adjourn. How's this? Let's see if we can get this done in less than a half an hour. Okay, so quickly, I have a motion to adjourn by Jenny, second by Beth. All those in favor say aye. Have a good time. See everybody on Monday. Take care.